So welcome to this World Satsanga held on the 23rd of February 2022 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Moore Show. I think it's now called the Kevin Moore Show. And if you can see his work and his docu-series, They Call Us Channelers, on his YouTube channel, which is called the Kevin Moore Show. And I thank him again for the work he does for exposing the greater reality and presenting it in his particular way to everybody. So what we're going to do today is to understand what is meditation. That's today's lecture. What is meditation? Well, people have lots of different ideas of what meditation is, but in essence, it is a focus. It's a concentration, a concentrated, dedicated focus upon something. And in the Hindu texts, they say that meditation is anything which gives you focus on connecting with God. In this instance, specifically with my work, it will be connection with source, which is the same thing. You can call it God, or you can call it the source of everything. And as we are individualized units of source, then it is the source of everything that we are. So meditation is a form of focused and dedicated concentration. There are different types of meditation depending upon who you speak to, who you liaise with, who you work with, who you meditate with. But in essence, they come into a number of different categories. Usually, they have a focus on doing something to help to calm the mind, slow the mind down so that we don't get distracted with things such as, work around the house, shopping lists, what we've got to do, who we've got to see, who we've got to telephone call, all what we need to do to go to work the next day. So we need to detach ourselves from those. So a guided meditation is one way of doing that, where we may listen to a recording or join a meditation group, where an individual takes control of the group and talks through a certain visualization, which is one's visualized in one's mind's eye, or is given, shall we say, form or function through one's mind's voice, for instance. So if you speak with your spiritual voice, or you see it with your mind's eye, your perceptual vision, then that's the way you would experience what the meditation leader would give you. So that's a guided meditation. And in essence, that's what you're going to experience at the end of the satsanga, a guided meditation. The other meditations are based upon various different forms of pranayama, which are basically breath techniques whilst concentrating on those breath techniques. So in essence, the pranayama, the breathing, is the focus to withdraw you from the distractions in the outside world around you. So Hong Saw is one, and Kriya Yoga is another one. With Hong Saw, as you breathe in, you mentally say the word Hong, because like a long drawn out Hong. So Hong. At the same time, you visualize energy going in through your spiritual third eye, diagonally across to the back of the skull where the medulla oblongata is, and down your spine to the coccyx. And then when you breathe out, you say saw. Mentally say saw. You don't say it physically. Mentally say saw. But it's saw. As you're doing this, you visualize the energy. We'll feel the energy go from your coccyx back up your spine to the medulla oblongata at the back of the base of the skull, and then diagonally across to your third eye and moving out again. So you're moving energy through your spine and third eye and medulla oblongata as you're saying Hong Saw, as you're pulling in your breath and expiring your breath. Again through the nose because it comes in, and out through the mouth as you're breathing out as you're expiring. And the words Hong Saw are spelled H-O-N-G, like in Hong Kong, but Saw sounds like S-A-W, but it's actually S-A-U. And in essence, it means I am one with God, and God is one with me, I am God. So it's fairly similar to the work that I do with Traversing the Frequencies, where we say we are one with the source is one with me, I am the source. And it's interesting that I didn't discover the similarity until I had actually read some of the texts associated with Paramahansa Yogananda, and the fact that Hong Saw does exactly the same thing. So it's interesting that the truth always comes out. If you're seeking universal truth, you will always get the truth, which is interesting. So irrespective of where you come from, if you're seeking the truth, you'll go to the truth. So being one with the source being one with you, and you being the source, is the same as being one with God, and God is one with you, and you are God. Because we're individualized units of source or God. So that's a pranayama-based exercise. There is a Kriya Yoga-based exercise, which I could share, but again, that you would need to go through so we say a special route to get to it. It's something which is given to people if they are dedicated. And it's quite a difficult technique, and it's very difficult to explain it over an audio. So I will leave that for people who want to study Kriya Yoga properly by going to special classes, because that takes some shall we say some physical concentration on the way you breathe and where you pull energy in and you push energy out. Okay. And the breath as well. So you've got guided meditations, and you've got pranayama, which is a focused meditation based upon breathing in and out. And then you've got the meditation that basically you can just do on your own, which is detaching yourself from all the five senses we've got and your body as well. That's a detached based meditation, state of beingness. Now, at the end of this satsanga, I lead you through a state of, a way of achieving a state of beingness with a meditation. And that is guided meditation. But if you do it on your own without the recording, then it is a self-generated meditation, which is basically just creating a state of beingness by detaching from your body, detaching from your five senses. It slows the heart down, it slows the thought processes down, and you just focus on just being. And that is beingness-based meditation, which doesn't require any other form of focus other than just you slip into it, just like that. So those are the three main types of meditation: breathing-based focus, pranayama; guided meditation-based; or detachment-based, which is you've generated yourself by just being, shall we say, experienced in meditation, so you can detach from every distraction that could possibly be. So you get rid of the mind chatter. Okay, so those are different types of meditation. It's, again, meditation is a form of concentration, and some people actually classify meditation as being focused on something as well. So if you have a job around the house, for instance, where you are effectively super concentrating on to the detriment of everything else, so you're focused on, let's say, hoovering the house. You have a noise in the background, which is the vacuum cleaner, which is drowning out noises from the street, the house, anything else, and maybe even your children or your partner's movement around the house. So you're so focused on cleaning the house that you don't hear what they're saying, what they're doing, or anything else, or even their presence. So doing something also creates a focus. And you could argue that doing something creative, such as using clay or pottery, or doing painting, or even writing, can be a form of meditation. But these things are, or even singing is a form of meditation, or a mantra is a form of meditation. And sometimes prayer can be classified as a form of meditation. But again, these are all using a focus, some sort of focus to detach you from the outside world. True meditation is a function of one's capability of detaching from the physical. And that means that you don't need pranayama, you don't need a guided meditation, you don't need something else to focus on. And this is true meditation. There are some some types of meditation where you focus on an image or something that allows you to detach from the rest of the world, physical world. That could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be Muhammad, it could be your guru, it could be anybody. But again, that's a physical function. That's focusing the eyes on something. So if you want to use a physical focus, then why not just close your eyes and gently focus on the location of the spiritual or third eye, which is in the same location as the spiritual or third eye chakra. They occupy the same location, but not the same space. That seems strange, doesn't it? But they're in slightly different frequencies, so that they occupy the same space, same location, but not the same frequential space. So you can focus on that, and you might find that you start to feel a little bit of pressure or disturbance around that area. And that tells you that you're focusing on the right area. It's very easy to slip into that. And you may even find that you see a circle appear in your mind's eye, like a golden circle, and inside that golden circle is like a purpley area. And in that purpley area, you might see slowly a blob of white, which is difficult to control. But as you get closer to this blob of white, you focus upon it, it starts to look like a 5-pointed star, the Star of David, if you want to call it that. And this is another thing to focus on, because this is the perceptual visualization of the spiritual or third eye as a gateway to move your sentience outside of the body. So if you concentrated even more and you move your sentience, your concentration through that star-shaped visualization, you can detach from the physical form. Not totally, because you're still incarnate, but you can detach from it and move your sentience around outside of the form. This is classified as astral traveling, if you wish. And the Hindus call it samadhi, which is moving outwards of the body. And it can also be classified as a state of bliss as well, because from this position you can also commune with Source or God, feel the deep joy associated with communion. So moving through the third eye in this way is another form of meditation. It is full communion with Source, or detachment and astral traveling as well. So these are the different types of meditation. Basically, there's the three, but the fourth one is a function of a form of concentration on something, which in this instance would be concentration on the visualization of the spiritual or third eye in your closed eye vision, and moving through it to assist in the movement of your sentience outside of the body and into the rest of the physical environment, not encumbered with the physical form, but just moving your sentience around. Okay, so that's today's lecture. What is meditation? Simply a focus on God or Source, and creating a level of communion with God or Source, either through being completely detached and state of beingness, using the spiritual or third eye to detach from the body, using pranayama or breathing techniques to form a function of focus, or by using other guided meditation, which is based upon an audio or a being part of a meditation group where somebody takes control and does the guided meditation for you. Right, let's go to the questions and answers. Well, welcome everybody to this questions and answers session to the February Satsanga, and I welcome you all. And I realise that it's a bit difficult sometimes for the midweek version, but it's actually more so we say beneficial for myself to be midweek rather than the weekend, because the weekend can be a bit hectic and a bit sort of chaotic in terms of time and getting back to home to be able to do this. So I appreciate that some people can't make the midweek, and I also appreciate those people who've made the effort. So if you can start to put your questions through the chat, that'd be fantastic. But also, before you do send them, can you please make sure that you read them to make sure they're coherent, because sometimes I have a little bit of problem reading them if they're a bit disjointed. So make sure that they're coherent first. Okay. So that the first question come through from Andrew, right? Does communing with our tests happen straight away, or do we, as aspects, have time to work with and explore the energetic? If we don't commune straight away, what are some of the things we can do in energetic? Also, what is the most popular form of communion? That's a very good question, and a lot of that is actually answered in the book, the And Dialogues, and it's also answered in one of the lectures, Who We Are and How We Incarnate. We do tend to enter into a level of, shall we say, retrospective analysis. Some people call it the life review, some people call it a rest period, but it's basically how we've done in terms of how we've interacted with the environment, how our guides and helpers have helped us, and how we've managed to basically work with the interaction with others in the circumstances that we've created, or they've created, or we've collectively created within the environment. So when we finish the incarnation, there's usually this period of analysis, which is just trying to see how we could potentially improve the next one by learning from how we've worked with this one. There's no failure, there's no right or wrong, there's no chastising ourselves or being chastised by guides. It's just understanding what we've done and how we could potentially do it better maybe next time. But there are many forms of communion. There is still staying disconnected but connected, if that makes any sense. We are still projected from the true energetic self, but still connected to it in a similar way to what we are when we're incarnate, but we're disincarnate. That's a form of sort of projected communion, because we have more communicative ability because of the increased bandwidth, because of our frequencies that we exist within. Then we have different forms of communion whilst we're integrated within the energies and the sentience of the true energetic self. So we can be completely diffuse, which means that we become the true energetic self rather than an individualized aspect of it. We can become diffuse but not integrated. So we can become, we can still have our individuality, but our sentience and our energy that we've used to anchor the sentience to can be everywhere. Basically, it can be not specifically in one location, or it can be sectorized, rather like how we sector a hard drive, an old-fashioned computer hard drive, and it can be a mixture of all those together. Basically, there's lots of different versions. I encourage you to go onto the website www.beyondthesource.org, go into events, look at lectures, and then down there you'll get the free download, which is the PDF file of the PPP for Who We Are and How We Incarnate. But the details are in the in the book, the And Dialogues, and it's worthwhile reading as well. It's very good. Well, thank you for that. But in terms of what's most popular, it just depends upon the aspect, the soul, as to how it prefers to reintegrate with its tests. I would argue that the best way is complete communion, like just becoming a drop of water in the oceans, that way. But which is what happens to our tests eventually at the end of an evolutionary cycle when it recommunes with source. However, most individuals who've experienced individuality, either incarnate in the human form or, for instance, other vehicles or body types within the physical universe, would prefer to stay individualized. So I guess that depends upon the aspect when they recommune. But that's a very good question. Thank you very much. Okay, well, thank you, FN, for just being here. It's good. Next question. I have this very, very strong feeling that I don't belong to this planet and my actual home is elsewhere, somewhere else. Ever since I was a kid, outer space and anything related to extraterrestrial existence fascinated me. And I strongly feel this is my secondary incarnation. I often feel myself crying over this as if I just want to go back home. And recently, I'm also having a huge spiritual awakening. So will my friends and family ever contact me? Well, it's quite likely that you are in a secondary incarnation rather than a primary incarnation. And although I sort of frown a bit with people saying, oh, I belong to a civilization within the physical universe and different planets within the Arcturian system or the Sirian system, etc., etc., etc. We actually do exist in the multiversal environment, the energetic environment, the physical environment. We are and do at times, not often, but regularly, get ourselves into the possibility of either a mechanical version or the energetic version of being able to split our sentience from a vehicle or body type that's in a higher frequency than we are right now, and project some of that sentience into another body or vehicle that gives us the experience or the possibility of experiencing existence, incarnate existence, in a lower frequency. So in that instance, we have up to 90% of the sentience here with us now, and the other 10% is just maintaining the connection, so that particular body type is maintained. But there also there's times when it's up to 50% or more sometimes, but that is left within those higher frequencies, and lower levels of sentience are used in the projected aspect that is in this body. So it's quite likely that you are experiencing a level of homesickness, if that makes any sense, through knowing that you are in a location that allows incarnation, but it's a higher frequency and is more connected because it's a higher frequency, and therefore we have a higher level of connective ability and functionality as well. So that's a good one. Yeah. So just meditate on it basically, and you'll start to feel where you come from as being not just that other location where your primary incarnation is, but also where you normally exist within the multiversal environment as a function of being in the energetic. Okay, so next question. I am diagnosed bipolar, and I experienced an episode where I thought, let somebody in, where I thought that I was alone or existed alone. It was a terrifying experience. Did the origin ever go through this sort of existential, I can't even say it, the existential crisis when it first became aware of itself being so large and so alone? It's never actually said that to me, but one can imagine that it was so occupied with understanding who and what it was that it didn't consider it. And the only time it may have considered the possibility of existing with other versions of it, with other versions or other entities or beings, was when it tried to create 12 versions of itself. But if you don't know yourself, how can you recreate yourself 12 times in isolation, giving each of those different versions of yourself the same potential to become sentient that you had? So that was bound to fail. So arguably the creation of the 12 source entities is a function of the need for help in spreading its sentience and its omnipresence and omnipotence, but also it gives it a feeling of communion as well, that it's able to individualize smaller aspects of its sentience and energy to assist itself. So it's almost like us, being alone, but then having children, I guess, and then the children work with us, and we no longer feel alone because the children are also experiencing, learning, and evolving. Okay. So next one. There are certain places in Earth where extraterrestrial activities are very common. One such place is Lake Manos Savara, Mount Kailash, in the Indian-Chinese border. This is a great place of significance in Hinduism, and many yogis live there. Many yogis have been living there for thousands of years have said UFOs and other extraterrestrial activities are very common there. So is there any interdimensional portal where aliens can easily come and go. Are there any such places on this planet? There are lots of locations that are, shall I say, local areas of high frequency, which is incredible considering what's happening right now. But there are locations on the Earth that maintain its high frequency, such as areas where, for instance, humankind doesn't interrupt it too much, like the Himalayas, like some of the rainforests that haven't seen modern humankind at all, and some of the depths of the oceans, for example, but also areas which are revered by humans as being areas of natural beauty and have been given national park status and all those sorts of things, or heritage status. And so there are areas of naturally high frequency. Now, those areas of naturally high frequency can be used by other incarnate entities who are naturally of a higher frequency to jump the gap between a higher frequency and a lower frequency. And the way they do that is to create another area around themselves of a locally low frequency. So if a locally high frequency in a lower frequency can be in contact with a locally low frequency in a higher frequency, that creates a doorway, a portal between the two frequential levels, or what we would classify as two worlds, which not is just different frequential levels and the different things that are expressed or manifest on those things. So there are areas that naturally occur that way. Of course, we sometimes call them wormholes in our limited understanding, or black holes, and there are those areas that are created by entities either mechanically or by just using their desire, their will. Okay, so that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I know of one in Sweden, clearly, not far from a place called Trollhättan, but also some of the ley line areas where there's lots of ley lines mixing together or crisscrossing together. That also creates an area of locally high frequency. Okay, so let's have a look at the next question. Okay, I have not understood how dimensions and different frequencies levels are placed. You have said the dimensions 1, 2, 3 are the lowest and are called the gross physical. So what are we currently incarnating into, and which dimensions our physical universe? Is it possible to go to see or see these levels 2 or 3, or our current technology? How can we go to these frequencies? Well, I'll explain the structure of the multiverse as I currently understand it. Okay, it's fluid, it's amorphous, but there is a way of understanding it through using a structured approach. Okay, because everything exists concurrently in the same volume of space, if you want to call it that. We exist in a multiversal environment, and that multiversal environment is used to both create an environmental opportunity for evolutionary progression, and it's also a metric for our evolutionary progression, because as we evolve, we progress through it, or our true energetic self does. Each of the aspects of the multiverse are created through a separation of levels. Okay, the levels are created through different dimensional conditions. Okay, and they're a very high level of structure from our perspective, and there's 12 full dimensions that create the multiversal environment. They all behave in the same way apart from the first full dimension, so I'll leave that alone for the moment. That's very important. The other 11, the second to the 12th full dimension, they all behave in exactly the same way. They all split out into 3 subdimensional components, and they all split out again. Each of those subdimensional components further splits out into 12 frequency levels or frequency bands. And each of those frequency levels or frequency bands from the second full dimension upwards create the opportunity to support a self-contained, simultaneous, not parallel, that's something else, universal environment in its own right. So each of those frequency levels is a universe. It's got the capacity to hold a universe. As the frequencies increase, the level of finitude increases, the level of content within them also increases, okay? And the level of ability to manipulate it also increases. So we have 11 times 3, 11 full dimensions, times 3 subdimensions, times 12 frequency levels equals 396 frequencies, or 396 universes. However, the first full dimension houses all the lowest frequencies and therefore behaves slightly differently. And I didn't understand this in the history of God. So if you're reading the history of God, you need to go to the Beyond the Source books to see how I started to understand it and started to clarify the situation. The first full dimension houses all the lowest frequencies. And so although it's split out into 3 subdimensional components, it collapses back into a composite subdimensional component, which only allows 12 frequencies to be created as a result of it. And those 12 frequencies are all required to create a universe, the physical universe. So we have a rather unique situation where we have one universe occupying a whole dimension. And it requires 12 frequencies within that dimension to create it because they're all low frequency. So it's a unique situation. So we have another 12 frequencies added onto the 396 frequencies, which equals 408 frequencies, but only one more universe added onto the 396 universes that those other frequencies create. So 397 universes. So what mankind calls the third dimension is actually the third frequency level. Three-dimensional understanding is basically a metric for explaining volume, height, width, and depth. It's nothing to do with understanding a dimension from a structural condition of the multiverse at all. It's a complete misnomer. Advanced theoretical physicists are starting to understand this now, and certainly Stephen Hawking was starting to understand it towards the end of his particular incarnation. So it's worthwhile reading the history of God, and it's worthwhile reading beyond the source books. It explains it more. But what I also understand now is that these things, although it's a structure to understand, or a good, should we say, tool to understand how it all works, it's very amorphous. It's all within and without everything else. And a good example of why we need 12 frequencies to house a universe, whereas the other frequencies can house a universe in their own right, is like data, computer data. In the old days, we used to have these 7-inch floppy disks, and they held very little. And you'd have had to have hundreds to hold a decent Word document these days. Okay, and then we started to get better. We started to get smaller floppy disks, and then we got zip drives, and then we got the very low megabyte levels of memory sticks. And so you might have had hundreds of floppy disks to hold the information on one frequency that occupies a physical universe. Let's call them memory sticks. If we need 12 1 gigabyte memory sticks to hold the data for the physical universe, but the next level up, the 13th frequency, which is the first frequency in the first subdimensional component of the second full dimension, holds all that in one go. So it's like having a 12 megabyte memory stick. You start to understand how it works. And each level upwards increases by the power of 12. So the volume and the frequential finicity, if you want to call it that, finitude, increases by a power of 12. So that's why it's a bit difficult. But thanks for asking that question. Perfect. Let's see if I can backtrack and see the other questions. Okay, next question. Does event space have consciousness, sentience, and awareness? What is event space made of? Is it the relationship between event space and origin, or what is the relationship? The relationship between event space and the origin is that the event space is part of the origin, basically. Now, originally, event space had sentience at a higher level of sentience than the origin, but it recognized that this embryonic level of sentience that was happening around it had the more capability than itself. And so event space gave up its own potential to become the dominant sentience by giving up the event space that led to its dominance, allowing another event space to come into being. Now, event space is something which is a function of energy and the whole structure of the origin that duplicates itself whenever there's an evolutionary opportunity or there's a potential for a choice, for example. And so it's a functional part of the origin now, whereas previously, right at the very start, before the origin became even sort of properly aware of itself, it was aware, and it also understood that this was a more robust way forwards in terms of spreading the possibility of polyomniscient sentience across the whole of the structure that is there and was beyond the capacity of even the event space to understand what was there. So the event space is part of the origin. But if you read the book, I think it's in the Origin Speaks of the Curators. I'm just looking at my book list up there. It explains what happened in that. Certainly within the Origin Speaks, and certainly there's part of it in the Curators as well. That's good. Thank you for that question. Okay. Next question. I'm very concerned with the health of the planet. Humans are not good stewards of the earth. Is there any hope for humanity taking the crisis of the on climate change seriously before the changes to our habitat lands on reaching tipping point? At the rate we are behaving, soil fertility will be destroyed in the next 30 plus or minus years, and the pollution from the plastics is collecting in the ocean's air and our bloodstreams. Microplastics seems to be like life has become a waiting game of watching humans destroy itself all over, rather than a place where we can evolve our skills. Yes, there are a number of different versions of the human race that have existed and have achieved high levels of, shall we say, civilization. And you could argue that where we are now is a high civilization, but we're not. We just technically and technologically evolved to a certain level. We haven't evolved mentally yet. We're still very, very immature, is the best way of saying it. I keep getting drawn back to a film called The Day the Earth Stood Still, where Keanu Reeves and another actor, I can't remember his name now, he was in Monty Python. Okay, John somebody there. We're talking together, and he'd say, well, how did you evolve to where you are now? And and Keanu Reeves said, well, we almost destroyed ourselves. And this other actor said, well, if we're where we are now, you've got to allow us to do the same thing to understand ourselves. And it's almost like we have to go into a level of supreme emergency, such as with world wars, where we start to think not of ourselves in a selfish way, but we start to think of the greater environment and how we interact with the environment, how we interact with each other in a different way. And you can see that's happening again with not just with the environment, but also our political scene is chaotic right now, and you can see what's happening in Russia. That's an interesting thing as well. So it's all about really us removing our individual need to be selfish and starting to realize that we've got to work together in communion to save not only ourselves, but everything around us and everything that's going to happen ahead of us. Because we can see from the past that when civilizations get to the point of not really being in control, that they end. And there's a period of reconciliation, and then a new one starts to grow. So if we want to become the same as those, we carry on. If we want to become better, then we need to listen to people who are like, for instance, Greta Thunberg, like David Attenborough, and other individuals who are trying to become and show us how to move forwards, so that we do move forwards. Okay, to make sure and help and show other people as well. It's not just about them or us; it's about all of us. Okay. Next question: who am I actually, and what is the difference between me and the source entity one? You are actually a small individualized unit of sentience of a smaller individualized unit of sentience that is individualized from source. So if we have the source here, the source divided itself into two. Part of it was used as an environment for evolutionary progression, multiverse. Another part of that was also the individualization of its own sentience and associated energy to create our true energetic selves and the various different forms of them. Each of those true energetic selves has the capability of individualizing its own sentience and projecting it into different aspects of the multiverse. So you are a smaller individualized unit of a smaller individualized unit of source. So think of it like you're the quark of your body. You're a quark of your body. So although you're small individualized, you're actually source. So that's the way to think of it, even though it's quite a small thing. And the next part of it is when somebody's praying to God, what is actually happening? Are they actually communicating with the SE1 or the test, or is everything just inside their head? Do prayers work? And if yes, how can it be explained from an energetic perspective? Prayers are not as good as mantras or as pure meditation. They are simply a very low-powered desire or will. They can be turned into very powerful if they are focused, very, very focused. But when we are praying or focusing in any way, shape, or form, even if it is prayer, you know, and it's low power in comparison to to fully immersed meditation or transcendental meditation or samadhi. It is useful because it means that you are communing, you're raising your frequencies to a level which is above where your ambient frequencies are whilst you're incarnate. And that brings you just a little bit closer to those frequencies associated with where you are normally when you're disincarnate, albeit a fraction, like thousandths of an inch, for instance. It helps, and it does help if you keep doing it, or you do the chakra opening exercises at the start of each day. If you go onto my website, again, www.beyondthesource.org, look for press pack, go into the press pack, and you'll find a load of different downloads. Some of them are slightly out of date, so I apologize for that. But in there, there's the chakra opening exercise audio and chakra opening exercise PDF file. And that, if you do those exercises first, you open your chakras more than they are normally. Okay, chakras are always open on tick over. But if you can open them more, it raises your frequency. So you add that into focused prayer, meditation, or meditation with mantra, which what a focused prayer would be, then you'll get closer, which is useful. Masters like Jesus and Muhammad and others come on the planet Earth for spiritual growth and the evolution of the whole of humanity. But when they leave, people tend to create religion around them and then use them to cause and justify violence. So opposite things are happening of what they actually intend to do so. Instead of accelerating their spiritual growth, souls here on Earth are identifying themselves with a particular religion and eventually living in ego, ignorance, and hating each other. So what's going on? Religion has caused massive damage to the humanity, and behind almost all religion, there's a master who intended to do something else. Yeah, Jesus Christ once talked about the divine feminine entity called Barbello, whom he said is the first thought of origin. Jesus Christ referred to origin as monad, which is the same as the Brahman concept of Hinduism, the absolute. Yes, Barbello is androgynous in nature and is found in the non-chronological gospel. They were hidden by the early church for a variety of reasons. Same concept of a divine feminine entities found in Hinduism. Okay, they call it Parvati or Mahadevi or Deva, the primordial mother. Her other half is divine masculine known as Shiva. So what are they talking about? Can you explain this concept? Some of these concepts are basically to do with understanding of individuals who have power. Some of their understanding and the transmission of those understandings that were previously understood in levels of detail, but needed to be given to people who didn't have that detail. So they were given in things like stories, for example, and that's where you can see the Bhagavad Gita, and you can see a lot of the stories that Jesus, the parables that Jesus gave. The issue is that the stories don't go into the detail, but they tell the concept. So people were taught the concepts if they couldn't understand the detail. And we do it now, clearly. I mean, I do it a lot when I think about it. So I'll give an example. We all give examples to try and help to explain something that somebody we're trying to work with can't understand. And so these examples are based upon the language of the time, the understanding of the time, the education of the time, and the ability of the individuals receiving the information to be expansive enough to understand it and work with it and potentially open up to more. So the reason why it goes wrong is because there's interpretation there within those stories to help explain it. And as that information is passed on, the story gets modified depending upon the desires or the preferences of the individual who's telling the story. So that's why it all changes, really. But the concept of the absolute with the Hindu text is right. The concept of the idea of mean, the absolute has no name. The origin has no name. Source has no name. It just is. It's just that we like to give something a label to help us understand it. Next question: are we inside the origin, or are we inside source density 1, or are we outside both of them? We're inside the source, which is inside the origin. That's the way to understand it. It's an easy question to answer. Thank you. Next question: does an experiential threshold exist? In other words, at what point is the collection of experience accumulated by those of us here at the lower frequency environments enough for the source to have enough experiential data for the origin to have understanding of this portion of itself and shift its self-discovery to another area? Also, when this happens, will this frequential environment remain inhabited, or will it shift to another area to help in the origin self-discovery? The threshold is when every aspect of sentience, the true energetic selves, with our help as being smaller aspects of our true energetic selves, have experienced every possibility that can be created in all of the different universes within the multiverse. So when we've all understood everything, and we've experienced everything, and we've interacted with everything and everyone, and there is nothing that can surprise us, and we've learned from it and evolved from it, then we all go back to source, and the source then depopulates that area of energy. Sentience moves away. We're all back into communion with source. We become one with source totally, in totality. The source's sentience depopulates the area of sentience within the origin, and then it moves to another area of sentience that's not worked with, and repopulates it, and then starts another evolutionary cycle. Okay, so that's how that works basically in a nutshell. And again, I think that is also in the Origin Speaks, so it's worthwhile having a read of that and seeing how it goes there. Good question. We're at probably the 8-minute mark now, so we'll have to be very quick with our questions. But I do apologise if I don't manage to answer a question, so I don't want to be just cut off. Okay. How does sentience perceive, interface, or work with the energetic realms without senses? Sentience cannot see, I presume, nor hear, nor smell, nor does it have a body. How then does it operate itself and its desire without the mind and sense appendages? The need for senses is a human thing. We have the 5 physical senses. We have the hearing, we have the seeing, the smelling, the tasting, and the touching. But when we're energetic, we don't use anything like that. We just have the ability to connect by using our desire. Our sentience moves around energy. Although we are, as aspects, projected from a true energetic self, connected to a body of energy, i.e. we occupy a volume of energy to help us to experience a particular environment that we're in, we actually don't need that energy. So we experience everything in a completely different way. I can't explain it, but it's like having thousands upon thousands of different senses. Yeah. Another way to explain it is a dog's capacity to smell. So he smells tens of thousands of different types of olfactory responses, or whatever they call it, more than we do. So think of it that way, is that it's just a completely different way of experiencing things. So and we communicate by understanding our sentient signature, so to speak, which includes a level of evolutionary progression as well. Okay, so let's have a look. So if everything is happening within the origin, then what is the difference between me and the inanimate objects like a book or a stone? What is their relation to the origin? Everything is energy, and our relationship to the solid, the physical, the form, is that we create it. In essence, our desire to be here in this environment and perpetuate it is a function of our, shall we say, remote desire. I'm not going to say subconscious, because it's beyond subconscious. So we desire this environment to be here. So everything is energy. And although our sentience is sentience and can exist without energy, everything is part of the origin. So everything is origin. The book, You know, the table I'm working on now, my seat, okay, my beard, is all origin. Okay, so there's no difference. It's all part of the origin. Next question. It seems, that's fair. It seems there is more controlling rather than creation. Leaders seem to want to control rather than creating a better environment, or rather than creating a better environment. Any help we can give. Basically, this is, you know, a function of materialism. It's a function of karma. It's selfishness, wanting to be in control, be the leader. Okay, rather than being, you know, trying to help us all progress. Yeah, and as Marnie's just said, it's the difference between broadband versus dial-up internet. Actually, it's the difference between broadband and using smoke signals. Okay, so good. Next one. How can we connect with as pure sentience versus our five senses? That was my broadband versus dial-up analogy. Basically, meditation is the key to everything. Okay, if we meditate, we raise our frequency. We shut out. The idea is to shut out the senses. You know, divorce ourselves from these five senses. Detach ourselves from the physical form. When we detach ourselves from the physical form, we transcend it. Hence, transcendental meditation, which is called samadhi in Hindu texts. Okay, it's detaching the sentience. A function of that is that we can go into the local frequencies, which are the astral levels, which are the frequency level 4, 5, 6, and 7. Fourth is the lower astral, fifth is the upper lower astral, sixth is the lower upper astral, and the seventh is the upper astral. And we can work within that, but we don't go very far. But if you work on other levels of meditation and connectivity, which can be achieved through the work I do or Kriya Yoga, for example, then one can progress and move the sentience beyond that which is within the local frequential state of the multiverse, that which we call the physical universe, but which is above the frequencies that we currently exist in the gross physical, where we are right now. Because obviously the other frequencies above us, the 4th, 5th, 6th, up to the 12th frequency, they are populated by us or other incarnate entities, but the vehicle they're using, the body they're using, is a higher frequency, and therefore we can't see it. So meditation allows us to be in the world whilst not being of it. It does. The whole objective of being here is to be in the physical but not of the physical. And when we can be in the physical but not of the physical, we master incarnation. And when we've mastered incarnation, we no longer need to do it because we've mastered it. So when we're in the physical but not of the physical, we've, as I said, we've mastered incarnation. We no longer need to be here to progress, to evolve. So that's when we become ascended, or we become ascended masters. Well, thank you very much for attending this satsanga in February, the questions and answers session. And now we're going to go to the meditation session. Well, welcome to the meditation of this World Satsanga. And what we're going to do today is just experience beingness. This is something we don't do usually. And even with meditation, if you're meditating on Source or God, you're usually focused in your meditation towards a final goal, which is communication with Source or God. In this instance, we're just going to be and just be part of everything that is part of the universe. It's a very simple meditation, and it's one that is going to just allow us to experience being. No thinking, no planning, no wondering about what jobs we've got to do in the house, what we've got to do for work, what we've got to do for the shopping, do we have to clean or hoover the house, all of these different things just need to go into the background. So just close your eyes, sit in your chair. Hopefully it's a straight backed chair, so it'll assist you in keeping your spine straight. Your feet flat on the ground, your hands palm uppermost on your upper thighs, and your eyes gently focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the two eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. actually in the dead center of the forehead. So just relax. Just empty your mind of everything. If you need to focus on something so that you don't let your mind wander, just focus on your breath, breathing in, comes in through your nose, into your lungs, fills your lungs up from the bottom like you'd fill a bucket up with water. And then when you breathe out through your mouth. And again, the bucket of water will be emptied from the top down to the bottom. Just concentrate on the air coming in through your nose, going down to the lungs, and then departing from the lungs back up through the mouth. Detach from everything. Detach from thought. Detach from feeling. Detach from where you are. Detach from any emotions you may have. Detach from your body. So you're just your own sentience in space. If you have a little bit of trouble detaching from your body, just make sure you're positioned in a way on your chair, or if you need to lie down, make sure you're comfortable so you don't get any pressure points on your body to draw your attention away from the state of beingness. And then when you have done this, just gradually use your mind to search around your body, feel the parameters of your body. And then when you have the parameters, just draw your consciousness away from those parameters, away from your toes and your feet, away from your ankles, your knees, your upper thighs, your pelvis, and then away from your fingers, your wrists, your forearm, your elbows, your upper arm, and your shoulders, and then away from your head, your eyes, your mouth, your neck. And then allow yourself to concentrate on your sentience being in a place called the soul seat. This is described by Barbara Brennan as being the essence of what we are. And the actuality is where the sentience sits. And it's in a similar location to the origin of the fourth chakra. Fourth chakras, the one front and one rear, which are the heart chakras. It's not on the outside of the body, it's in the middle of the body. It's called the center, but the same height as the axis of the two heart chakras. So you feel that you're just a spark of sentience seated in the place where your sentience normally seats itself when it's integrated with the body. The energy that animates the body detached from where you are, stand by the Tantien. Which is in a similar location to the third or solar chakras, but 3 inches in towards the center of the body. So the energy that you use to animate the body form is separate to sentience, which is located near the axis, the center of the body, and the axis of the front and rear heart chakras. So you're just sentience now. Just sentience, no thinking. The breathing is no longer there. Detached from the body, detached from form. Center on your beingness, your sentience that is quiet. No thought, no consciousness. Just sentience doing nothing but being. You are simply isolated sentience. Notice how you just feel like you're floating. You don't feel the body. You don't feel the heartbeat. You don't hear the heartbeat. You don't feel the rush or hear the rush of the blood in the veins and the arteries. You don't hear anything outside. Everything just is sentience. Just beingness. Notice how joyous your detachment feels. No focus on responsibilities, jobs, roles, expectations. Just your sentience, detached from incarnation, and in the space that is part of the multiverse, that part we call the physical universe. Just be. Notice how calm you feel, how detached you feel, how unworried you feel. No anxiety, no depression, no concerns about anything other than just the state of beingness that you're in. Just notice how your breathing no longer discernible. You're drawing in energies from the multiverse to energize you, to perpetuate your existence. Your heartbeat is super low, your breathing almost non-existent. And so this can be as long as you like. It's possible to stay here for hours upon hours upon hours on end, just in the state of beingness. No communication, no thought, no sensory stimulus, just your sentience in a state of beingness. So you can use this for as long as you wish. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, etc., etc. Okay. So it can become a really deep meditation, very beneficial meditation. Slowly come back into the room where you are. Slowly open your eyes, and if you need some grounding, take a drink of water. And this finishes this satsanga for February. And if you use this meditation to help you in times of stress or anxiety, it's absolutely beneficial. It calms one down, it reduces anxiety, it reduces depression, it reduces the urgency of doing something when you're not quite ready to do it. So it gives you the chance to consider things. So when you've done this meditation, you may find you have answers to questions or solutions to problems that you previously hadn't. So, looking forward to the next satsanga in March, and wishing you all of Source's love or God's love, and namaste to you all, and enjoy, which is as long as possible, this meditation.